Rebirth of the Earth Immortal Cultivator. Chapter 1. I am back. In the summer of 2007, a bus operated by Golden Dragon Travel Service was heading towards the county of Shui near Chuzhou, the city in the Hudong province. Shui was a backwater county in the middle of nowhere. In the heat of the summer, the passengers on the bus had mostly fallen asleep. The 5'6", handsome boy with a smooth face and a sleek haircut suddenly jerked his head up as he woke up from a nightmare. He scanned the bus with a weary look. As a reality finally set in, his face suddenly hardened with a frown. He had been to another world and back, yet no one on the bus would have any idea of what he had just been through. This is the same bus as the one I took to Chuzhou City for my last year of high school. Why am I here? Am I no longer in the tribulation? Could it be that I am back in the mortal world again? Disbelief flickered in Chen Fan's eyes as he thought to himself. How is it possible that I, Chen Beichuan, escaped the heavenly tribulation, and was reborn again as my former self? Chen Fan, also known as Chen Beichuan, was a cultivator. Beichuan was the cultivation name that his teacher had given him when he met his teacher for the first time. He cultivated for 500 years under one of the 9 celestial sects in the universe, the true martial immortal sect, and he was the disciple of the sect's grand elder, Kenkin, the Immortal Cultivator. Thanks to Chen Fan's incredible talent, it only took him 500 years to enter the last stage of his cultivation, the tribulation. He was thought to be the most likely cultivator in centuries to successfully ascend beyond the current realm to that of the immortals. Chen Fan lived in this universe for 500 years, fighting and winning every battle against any sentient being across the universe that dared challenge him. His invincibility had earned him the title, the North Mystic Celestial Lord. However powerful he had been, he had lost himself in the heavenly tribulation after all. It was not until his doom was knocking on the door did he realize that the culprit of his failure was the hastened pace during his cultivation. Fast and furious was his motto, but it had also made his cultivation foundation riddled with weak points. His resolution and dedication, the so-called Gao heart, crumbled when he had to face the mental demons that lurked in the darkest corners of his mind. His eagerness to complete the cultivation had become his downfall. To advance as fast as he could, he had left many regrets and made countless mistakes. As guilt and self-resentment slowly eroded his mind, he became vulnerable to the mental demons' deceits and illusions. As Chen Fan reflected his battle against the mental demons, he tried to tap into the energy within his system, to see if he was in another illusion. To his surprise, he found that not only was there no trace of his star-devouring Dernic power, but his boundless primordial essence had also disappeared. This is not the work of mental demons. I really am back. Chen Fan furrowed his brows as realization finally dawned upon him. Chen Fan knew that however real and vivid mental demons' illusions were, they could not mask all traces of a celestial lord's primordial essences. My powers are gone. There is not even a trace of Dernic power, primordial essence, immortal enlightenment in me, much less my precious Derma treasures. I am now no different than an ordinary man, and anyone could strike me down if they tried hard enough. Despite the huge setback in his cultivation, he did not seem to be too upset about it. Instead, he laughed at his defeat lightheartedly. So be it, my last life's cultivation was doomed from the beginning anyways. This time around, I will make sure that I take my cultivation one step at a time. I will not only complete but also perfect each and every level. He cracked a smile as fire danced in his eyes. I will return the humiliation and contempt the world had given me in kind, and I will learn from my previous mistakes and leave no regrets as I progress. There had been many regrets in his past life. Although his mind had always been preoccupied with cultivation, the regret and sorrow persisted. Mom, Dad, sister and Xiao Qiang. I am back. This time I will not fail you. Chen Fan lowered his head as resolution rose in his heart. Chen Fan was born in an ordinary family in the Shui County. His father, Chen Gerson, was in the Jin city of the Hudong province. His mother, on the other hand, hailed from a prominent household in the Jin city. The two met at college, and they quickly fell in love, despite the outcry from one family. The overall sentiment of the society was hostile towards marriage without the parents' arrangement. It was particularly true in a prestigious old money family such as the Wangs. After failing to put a stop to the marriage, Chen Fan's grandfather went as far as denouncing his own daughter. In a fit of anger, Wang Xiaoyan left her parents with her husband and settled in Hudong province. In order to prove to the Wang family that he was worthy of their daughter's hand, Chen Guoxin did not choose to stay in the populated cities where Wang family's influence was strong. Instead, he had moved to Shui County and started working as a low-ranking public servant. Chen Guoxin continued working for the county for a few decades, and never once had he tried to seek advantage using his connection with the mighty Wang family. He had worked his way up from his first low-ranking position to the management level, but it was still a far cry from the expectation of the Wang family. The tension between the two sides finally started to ease after Chen Fan was born. Chen Fan's grandfather granted the couple a visit during the Chinese New Year. However, unbeknownst to the young couple, what awaited them at Wang family were cold sneers and lofty disdain. The entire family had considered Chen Fan's parents a taint on the family's reputation. They had defied the will of the family patriarch and gave birth to a son who had brought no joy but only shame to the Wang family. As for Chen Guoxin's achievement in the county, it was laughable and pathetic in their eyes. The thought brought a bitter taste to Chen Fan's mouth. He shook his head and smiled dryly. Wang Chen, I bet that you had never expected me to be back from the future. My family had worked hard to catch up with you and your parents, but in the end, we are still worthless worms in your eyes. My mother was a proud person, and she could not stand being looked down upon. That was why she worked so hard, but what did she get in the end? Nothing. I swore I would avenge my mother. Although I am an ordinary person right now, once I got my power back, I will be knocking on your door. I will show you what it is like to be looked down upon and to be crushed like a worthless worm. Wang Chen was Chen Fan's cousin. He was the favorite child of the great house Wang. In Chen Fan's last life, he had tried for all his worth to catch up with Wang Chen but failed. The gap between Wang Chen and Chen Fan was unbridgeable. The last time that Chen Fan saw any visitor from Wang family was during his mother's funeral. As if the Wang family thought the death of Chen Fan's mother was not tragic enough for the young man, they had to gloat over the tragedy and sent only 3 youngsters to attend the funeral. No one from the older generation of the Wang family had come to pay tribute to their own blood, not his grandfather, uncle, or grandmother. To rub salt into the wounds, one of the visitors was Wang Chen. Wang Chen acted as if he was walking the red carpet instead of attending his aunt's funeral. Surrounded by his sycophantic entourage, his steps carried such a haughty and proud quality that blatantly disrespected the dead. He was the star, and wherever he went, he deserved attention and respect, regardless of the circumstances. Although it had been 500 years, the thought of the Wang family still lit up the knot of fire in Chen Fan's belly. This memory was toxic to a cultivator such as Chen Fan. Without coming to terms with the past, the cultivator would be vulnerable to the attacks of the devious mental demons. A small mistake would lay waste to thousands of years of hard work. Anyways, I better not dwell on the past. I wager that Shen Junwen's family fortune has not reached the Chuzhou city at this point in time. Looking out the window, the familiar scenery of the Chuzhou city filled Chen Fan's heart with nostalgia. The thought of Shen Junwen also reminded him of Xiao Qiang. He had loved that girl, and she loved him, but that was not how their love story ended. Later on, his love for her had turned into an obsession which ultimately ruined his cultivation. The mental demons had used her image to weaken his mind during their battle. One look of her face was enough to render his defense useless. Shen Junwen, you had robbed me of my fortune and the love of my life. You forced me to return to the county where I came from. You sat on your throne while I licked my wounds like a street dog. The thought brought Chen Fan's blood to a boil, and his eyes glinted like sharp steels. Shen Junwen was the director of the Huarong Group, a magnate of the real estate industry, and he was the son of the richest man in the Pudong province. He was also Chen Fan's greatest rival in love. Not only had he stolen Fang Qiong from Chen Fan, but he had also contributed to the collapse of his mother's company, the Splendor Group. Xiao Qiong and I had a crush on each other ever since we were little, and we hit it off when we met again at university after a long period of separation. However, it was you who came in and stole her from me. You had driven a wedge between her family and me and forced her to give up in the end. The last time I met Xiao Qiong was at an alumni party where I heard about her engagement to none other than you. I do not expect you to understand how I felt back then, but I promise that I will give it back to you 10 times worse. If not for Kenken's help, I would have already ended my miserable life after I jumped off from the roof of my apartment. Chen Fan murmured. It has been 500 years, and he should have already come to terms with what had happened. However, every single word that came out from Chen Fan's mouth carried a bone-chilling intent that threatened to claim souls. I will never forget the moment right before I decided to let go of my life. From that moment on, the old Chen Fan was dead, and the new Chen Beichuan was born. Thanks to you, I was able to focus entirely on cultivation. I fed on the anger inside of me and advanced through my cultivation at an incredible rate. It only took me 500 years to reach the final stage. Tribulation. I felt that I almost owe you my appreciation. Chen Fan's lips curled into a smile. While Chen Fan had lived as the loser, Shen Junwen was basking in the glory of his success. The Shen family had contributed to the death of Chen Fan's mother as well as the collapse of the Splendor Group. In other words, Shen Junwen and his family were responsible for nearly all the miseries in Chen Fan's life. In his last life, Chen Fan had lost everything to his opponent. These old wounds never healed, at least not until redemption was sought and completed. He grunted as anger flickered in his eyes. Shen Junwen, Fang family, Huan family, and Huan Chek, I will return the humiliation and suffering back to you in kind. After 500 years of cultivation, he was finally ready to right the wrongs in the first 30 years of his life. As he looked outside the window, his mind sought only one thing: retribution. Chapter 2. Jangkuran. Suddenly, the loud ringtone wrenched Chen Fan's mind out of his reverie. He glanced at the caller ID which read, "Mom? Is this Fan? Are you almost at Chuzhou City? Auntie Tank should be waiting for you outside the bus station right now. I told her to find a place for you in Chuzhou City and help me take care of you while you stay there. Do not blame me for being such a tiger mom and sending you away. You know how low your grades are right now. If you do not work hard, you could not even make it into a good university. So, I had to pull some strings to send you to the best school in the city. You listen to Auntie Tank while you are in Chuzhou City, you hear me? She was one of my business partners while I worked in Chuzhou City. Really nice people." Hearing his mother's harsh voice for the first time after hundreds of years sent a warm current through Chen Fan's body. Tears welled at the corner of his eye. "Mom, I get it. I will study hard, I promise," despite the tears, he replied with a bright smile. This was the first time he had heard his mother's voice ever since she passed away 500 years ago, or a few years later, depending on which timeline Chen Fan looked at. Mother had always been a distant and fuzzy concept to Chen Fan since they did not have many opportunities to meet each other. His mother, Huang Xiaoying, was the very definition of a willful woman. After having been held up as the object of ridicule by her own family, she had sworn to prove them wrong. In a fit of anger, she took Chen Fan's sister, An Yang, to the international metropolis of Zhenhai, and created the Splendor Real Estate Group. By the time Chen Fan went to college, the Splendor Group had grown into one of the largest companies in Zhenhai, and Huang Xiaoying was known as the Queen of Real Estate. Therefore, Chen Fan could not have remembered much about her.
At this point in time in his past life, it was not until she died in a car accident did Chen Fan finally realize how much his mother meant to him. She had always been the backbone of the family. Chen Fan remembered that his father's hair turned gray overnight after her accident. It was as if the tragedy had sucked his father's soul out of him, rendering him into an empty husk. Ah! I almost forgot to tell you. The Tang family has a daughter, and her name is Jiang Qiran. Unlike you, she is a straight-A student. Your auntie is very keen on setting you two up, but I had to warn you that studying is your priority right now. Huang Xiaoyan said. Chen Fan laughed in his mind. What kind of Asian mother would allow her daughter to date in high school? Chen Fan paused a second and then said, Mom, do not worry, I will study hard. Promise me that you will pay more attention to your health and safety while you are in Shanghai, particularly when you are driving. Is sister going to get her driver's license soon? When she does, you better let her drive. I do not trust your driving skills, Mom. Sooner or later you will have an accident. Okay, anyways, I have to go. I have already wired some money to your account but try not to waste it. Huang Xiaoyan hung up the phone. Chen Fan knew that although his mother was a resourceful and talented businesswoman, she was not the most detailed and meticulous person. Without the help of his sister Yang, her company would be plagued by minor mishaps and mistakes. The thought of his sister Yang brought another bout of pain to his heart. Aside from Xiao Qiang, his sister and his mother were the two other greatest regrets in his previous life. I owe her a big one, and I don't even know how to make it up to her. Chen Fan kept his silence. After all, how could he assign a value to familial ties? As Chen Fan was engrossed in his reflection of his past life, the bus arrived at the destination. Looking at the flood of people passing by him at the bus terminal, reality finally hit him. He was back. He was 17 years old, younger, and better than he ever had been. Another life, another story. Chen Fan cracked a smile, and then he followed the crowd to the exit. Meanwhile, outside of the Chuzhou City bus terminal, something had caught the crowd's attention. An imported red Audi A6. This car's worth was 700,000 yuan in 2007. It was no doubt a rare sight of luxury in the street of Chuzhou City. However, the car was not what the public was gawking at, it was the two women standing right in front of it. The older one looked like she was in her 30s. She had a beautiful face and was wearing a black dress tailored to her curves, a formal white shirt, and a pair of high heels. No doubt she was an elite-class woman with a white-collar job. The younger one was no older than 16, she was tall and was as beautiful as the older woman if not more so. They were Auntie Tang and her daughter, Jiang Qiran. Jiang Qiran surveyed the exit of the bus terminal with a frown. Mom, when will he be here? Do you want to call him? Jiang Qiran asked impatiently. We have only been waiting for 10 minutes. Auntie Tang refuted. Chen Fan's mother had been her best friend in Chuzhou City, and she could not let her down. Huang Xiaoyan trusted her, and naturally, she had to do her best to look after the child. Chen Fan is a very good child. Be nice to him. You two are going to be schoolmates, so I hope you will get along. This is the first time he's leaving his county, so he is not familiar with life in the city. You need to take care of him, Auntie Tang said. I know,
Mom. This is the 13th time you have told me the exact same thing. Jiang Qiran complained. Because of the stupid country boy, she thought she had to waste her entire afternoon outside of this stupid bus station under the stupid sun. She could have been spending time with her friends at the Starbucks with a cup of pumpkin spice latte in her hand right now, but no, she had to be here and be miserable. What's worse, she had noticed the way her mother had mentioned his name to her. She was trying to set her up with that boy. Well, over my dead body. Jiang Qiran thought to herself. Suddenly, she heard a voice calling out to her mother. Sorry for keeping you waiting, Auntie Tang. The boy politely greeted her mother with a gentle smile. Is this Chen Fan? Jiang Qiran quietly regarded the boy from head to toe while standing behind her mother. He was of average height, 5'7" if not less, the same height as she was in her flats. His look was pedestrian at best, and his taste in fashion was definitely questionable. She shook her head slightly. He is overrated, not nearly as cool as Li Yijin. Li Yijin was her classmate, president of the school's student council and the son of the deputy mayor of Chuzhou City. Li Yijin got both the good looks and a good family. He was one of the pursuers of Zhang Qiran, one that Zhang Qiran actually liked. The two were already regarded as a couple on campus. Auntie Tang smiled at Chen Fan. She was very pleased with Chen Fan's courtesy. Zio Fan, this is my daughter Zhang Qiran. She will start her last year of high school next semester, and you will be schoolmates. She is 3 months younger than you. You can call her Ran Ran. Make sure that you look after her for me at school, will you? Chen Fan nodded and smiled. Don't worry, Auntie Tang. I will treat her like my own sister. Afterward, he turned around to look at the girl who he had liked, hated, and eventually forgotten about in his past life. Her name was Zhang Qiran. She was not only Auntie Tang's daughter, but also his high school classmate and the first girl that he had liked. Chen Fan reminded himself that the year was 2007, before the real estate boom and her mother's sudden rise to power. Therefore, in the eyes of the mother-daughter pair, he was just a country boy. That was the first time I left the backwater county to a prosperous city. I was young and foolish. How could I not fall for an upper-class beauty such as Zhang Qiran? The flashback made Chen Fan lighthearted. What a foolish boy he had been. He should have known better. There was no way that Jian Qiran, the princess who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, would have had any feelings for him. Chen Fan shook his head. I remembered that she eventually fell in love with the most popular boy at that time, Li Yijin, the son of the deputy mayor of Chuzhou City. Later, the two of them went to Zhenhai University together and started officially dating each other. I had been quite devastated by that development. Chen Fan was no longer the boy he had been 500 years ago. What would he do this time? Would he make a proper closure to this secret infatuation? Chen Fan took the initiative and reached out a hand. Hello, my name is Chen Fan, from Si Shui County. We will be classmates in the future. Let me know if you ever need any help. Although Zhang Qiran had hurt him once, he had made the promise to Auntie Tang that he would protect her. Zhang Qiran had to admit that although the boy was not handsome by a long chalk, he was not entirely an eyesore. The features on his face could even be pleasing to her eyes, depending on the angle she looked at them. Unfortunately, his family was too poor. We could be friends at best. Zhang Qiran lamented in her mind as she shook Chen Fan's hand. Very well. I will take you up on it, Zhang Qiran said, and then her lips thinned into a smile. Her father was a high-ranking government official, and her mother ran a million-yuan company. She had never thought that she would ever need any help from Chen Fan. Auntie Tang put in, get into the car, we will go to your new place and drop off the luggage first. Then we will go to my house for lunch, where I will introduce you to your uncle. Okay. Chen Fan nodded with a smile. After getting into the vehicle, they headed toward Chen Fan's new house in the lakeside community. This was a mid-range residential property in the Chuzhou city. The scenery was beautiful as it was surrounded by trees and was right next to Yonghui Lake. It was also not far from the Ivy League high school where Chen Fan would be studying. Chen Fan was led to a large furnished one-bedroom suite. It came with air conditioning, hot water, bathtub, TV, sofa, and a refrigerator. It was evident that Auntie Tang had spent a lot of time preparing for his stay in the city. Thank you, Auntie Tang, for all of this, Chen Fan said sincerely. Auntie Tang was one of the few people who had been genuinely nice to him. She was a business partner of his mother, Huang Xiaoyin. She ran an architectural design company and was considered a successful woman. Worried about her son's low grades, Chen Fan's mother sent him to the best private high school in the city of Chuzhou, the Ivy League high school, and Auntie Tang had been taking care of him ever since. Not only had she helped him with accommodations, but she had also packed him lunch from time to time. Looking back on his past life, Auntie Tang had always been there looking out for him. You are too polite. Your mother has entrusted you to me so that I will take good care of you. Plus, I had always wanted a son, Auntie Tang said with a smile. Thank you, Chen Fan nodded, and he was ready to repay Auntie Tang's loving care in his past life. Auntie Tang felt the sincerity in his words, and she was even more impressed by the boy. Compared to that cocky city boy, Li Yijin, Auntie Tang preferred Chen Fan as a son-in-law. Money and power were not the key to a happy marriage. Honesty and integrity were. After a while, they drove out of the lakeside community, and towards the Tang family residence. Zhang Qiran and Chen Fan were sitting side by side in the back seat. They only exchanged a few words before the girl completely lost interest in Chen Fan. She was out of his league. None of them spoke a word to each other, dragging out the silence. Chen Fan eventually put on a tired look and rested his head against the window and pretended to be sleeping. Although Chen Fan had given her a good impression during their first meeting, she didn't like to talk to people who were less popular than her, especially when the boy was ignoring her in the first place. She knew the likes of him. Pretending he was not interested, thinking that he could make her feel jealous. She had seen too many boys play that trick on her, but none had succeeded. However, Chen Fan was not even remotely interested in her, much less in the mood of playing tricks. His mind was occupied by his cultivation. Chapter 3. Levels of Cultivation. For Chen Fan, the most important thing at the moment was to regain his power. The progression of cultivation was divided into 8 levels. Key Refinement, Cognate, Golden Corn, Nascent Soul, Soul Formation, Void, Reunion, and Tribulation. Although his teacher, Kenkin the Immortal Cultivator, had lived for 840,000 years, he had just reached the 7th level. Once the cultivator reached the 7th level, he was granted the title True Immortal and could live up to 100,000 years. In this universe, the 7th level True Immortal would be revered as the embodiment of power and invincibility. Their powers would allow them to crush the stars, swallow the sun, and even create another dimension beyond space and time. In the past 500 years, Chen Fan had reached the 8th level. Tribulation, surpassing his teacher and earned the title of the Celestial Lord. However, tribulation was too far away and too much for Chen Fan to worry about right now. I came back to the earth once during my cultivation. At that time, the earth's spirit key was completely exhausted, and it was no longer suitable for the cultivators to live. Compared to the earth, the realm of Kang, an alternative universe created by his teacher Kankin, was a much better place for cultivators to harness energy. Chen Fan reflected his last visit to Earth as he started to sense the key surrounding him right now. The last time he returned to the Earth, it would be more than 100 years later in this current timeline, and by that time, he would already be a successful cultivator. He ferried across billions of realms that separated him from the Earth in order to reach his hometown, but he was disappointed in the end. The Earth was no longer the same place as he remembered. The old national state system had fallen apart, and the humans had formed the Earth Federation. After the humans colonized Mars, they stepped out of the solar system and entered the era of interstellar traveling. Chen Fan had continued to live on the Earth for another 20 years, and he did not sense the presence of any other cultivators. The spirit key in this world right now was slightly more available than that of 100 years later, but it was by no means abundant. He shook his head silently. Even if there is a cultivator, they will be at level 2 at the most. I am afraid that I am still the only cultivator on Earth. Chen Fan knew very well what it meant. It meant that as long as he could regain a fraction of his power, he could lord over this world with ease. Chen Fan also knew that he didn't need advanced technology in order to reach his goals. He only needed to reach level 2 in his cultivation. Without reaching level 2, one cannot even call himself a cultivator. With the wealth of knowledge he had accumulated over the 500 years, Chen Fan wagered that it would take him only a few years to reach that stage. The spirit key is quite inconsistent around here. I'd better find a place with a stronger presence of key to help my cultivation. If I can locate a numinous treasure, I will be sure to break through the 2nd level in under 3 years. The thought of acquiring a numinous treasure amused Chen Fan. What am I thinking? With such meager amount of key on the earth, there wouldn't be any herbs left for me, much less numerous treasures. As Chen Fan mulled over his predicament, the vehicle had pulled over to Auntie Tang's house. Chen Fan's accommodation was located at the edge of downtown, facing the enormous Yangtze Lake. It was considered a high-quality mid-range property in the Chuzhou city. On the other hand, the Tangs lived in a suburban development in Yurchin district, which was only a few minutes' drive from Chen Fan's place. The car followed a highway that hugged the lake, and it eventually led them to the foot of the Yangtze Mountain. Chen Fan saw the name of the suburb development: Dragon's View Garden. Chen Fan recalled that the Dragon's View Garden was a high-end residential development in the Chuzhou city. A small bungalow in this area would cost as much as $2 million even before the real estate boom. Auntie Tang lowered the rear view mirror and saw fascination in Chen Fan's eyes. The Yangtze Mountain was the most famous landmark here in the Chuzhou city other than the Yangtze Lake. The Dragon's View was only the mid-tier development around this area. Maybe later we will go further into the mountain, and I will show you some villas. They make our house look like a shed in their backyard. You should come to visit us early in the morning too. The entire mountain will be shrouded in mist, hence its name, Yunwu. Cloudy mist. There was a hint of envy in Auntie Tang's voice while she spoke about those villas high up in the mountains. Up there, the cheapest house cost more than $10 million. It was developed by the richest man in Chuzhou City, and only his friends and the billionaires from the south could afford those properties. I could probably buy only a kitchen there even if I sold my company. Auntie Tang shook her head and then sighed. The richest man in Chuzhou City, the Shen family. Chen Fan thought. Your house looks very big in my opinion. Our family lived in a 100-square-meter home in our county. It was a government-subsidized property. Chen Fan paused and then said, if Auntie really likes those houses, I will buy you a few of them once I start to make money. I will make sure you can wake up every day to look down at the sea of cloudy mists beneath you. What was a villa to someone who could have the entire universe? He would have whatever his heart desired as soon as he reached level 2. Auntie Tang was pleased by Chen Fan's words. She said, very well. I will take you up on it. Tell your mother to come live with me. To help with her real estate company. Your mother and sister are two brave souls, trying to make a living in the metropolis where they have no one to turn to. If she retires now, we can go shopping together, or go to the spa if we really run out of things to do. What a life that will be, eh? Janki Ran listened to the conversation, and she was not very impressed by what she heard. Not even the richest classmate she knew could have promised to buy a villa up in the mountains as a gift. Everyone knew that only the richest of the rich could afford living up there. It seems that he is just like the others, full of empty talk and no real action. She was slightly disappointed at Chen Fan. She had thought that this boy from the countryside would be different than city boys, but it seemed that she was wrong. The decoration in Auntie Tang's home was elegant, in style, and exquisite in their craftsmanship. From the paintings on the wall to the blue-white porcelain vase on the table, it was evident that the Tang family was not only wealthy but also well-educated and had good taste in fine arts. After entering the hall, Chen Fan saw a middle-aged man sitting on the sofa, wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses. He was watching the news on TV. He was Zhang Qiran's father, Zhang Haishon. He was the deputy director of the Chuzhou city. Although his rank was not high, he was close to Chuzhou city's power center. Chen Fan bowed to him, and Zhang Haishon nodded absently. Come and grab a seat. Ran, why don't you go to the kitchen and make some tea for your dad and our guest? Can you guys wait a few minutes for dinner? I need to heat up some dishes. Auntie Tang spoke as she entered the kitchen. Zhang Qiran nodded and took out a box of purple clay tea set made by a renowned artist from the town of Yixin. Chen Fan was pleasantly surprised by Zhang Qiran's tea-making techniques. Her movement was fluid and smooth like flowing water, while her focus on the craft didn't allow a single drop to be spilled. It was evident that she had trained under a skilled teacher, a detail that Chen Fan did not notice in his previous life. Zhang Haishon's eyes were glued to the TV, and he didn't turn around to face the guest until the news was over. How is your father, Reeve Chen, doing? The last time I met him was at a government meeting 6 months ago. He is doing well. Thank you for asking. Chen Fan said politely. Chen Fan's father was the deputy magistrate of the Isai Shui County, and although his rank was similar to that of Zhang Haisheng, his jurisdiction was a remote county instead of a bustling city. Zhang Haisheng nodded. Your father is young and full of potential. His proposal, the sustainable development of county economy and the selection and application of environmental protection policies, was praised by the mayor. The mayor said that your father has an international perspective, and he agreed with your father that the future economic development is inseparable from environmental protection. Chen Fan nodded with a blank smile. Why would he think that a high school boy would be interested in boring politics? If Chen Fan could have understood half of what Zhang Haisheng had just spilled out from his mouth, he wouldn't have bankrupted his mother's company. Seeing that Chen Fan was not interested in he said, Zhang Haisheng frowned slightly and then changed the topic. I have heard from your auntie that your mother's real estate company in High City is developing very fast. Many experts are predicting that the country's property market will grow substantially next year. Your mother has chosen a good field. Chen Fan smiled and said, my mother's company was insignificant compared to that of Auntie Tang. Zhang Haisheng shook his head. You think too highly of her. Her company hired only a dozen people, earning merely hundreds of thousands a year. How would that compare to your mother's corporation? Chen Fan hurried a humble reply. I am not being modest at all. My mother had only a few people working under her, and that's all the help she gets. She had to run between the contractors and the developers and deal with endless paperwork. It's a hard job with not that much money. Oh, Zhang Haisheng frowned. What Chen Fan had told him was drastically different than what he had heard from his wife. Judging by his first impression of the boy, Zhang Haisheng was convinced that Chen Fan was not lying. Therefore, he wagered that the rumors about Chen Fan's mother he had heard before were exaggerated. Chen Fan's description of the company sounded more realistic, as well. It was started by a woman and her daughter in a place where they knew no one and had no connections. Building up a real estate empire so quickly seemed too good to be true regardless of how hard the mother-daughter pair had worked. So thinking, the smile on Zhang Haisheng's face faded away slowly. How are your grades? Zhang Haisheng asked. Chen Fan smiled and said, I was the top 500 in our county, and I have heard that your daughter ranked in the top 50 at the school. I think I will need her help at school. Shui County had the lowest education ranking among all counties under the Chuzhou city government. Without being in the top 10 in the Shui County, Chen Fan had no chance in entering even a second-tier university, much less a top-tier. Zhang Haisheng's brows furrowed even deeper after hearing Chen Fan's answer. The remaining traces of a smile on his face evaporated completely. Your mother had sent you to Chuzhou City to study, not for fun. Your family can only help you for a while, but not forever. If you want to be successful, you have to rely on yourself. Education is a stepping stone, no matter which field you are in. Chen Fan was caught off guard by Zhang Haisheng's sudden outburst. He erased the smile he was wearing and answered, You are right, Uncle Zhang. Although achieving high academic standing was not Chen Fan's highest priority, once he advanced in his cultivation, getting into a top-tier university should be a piece of cake. After exchanged a few more words with Chen Fan, Zhang Haisheng was disappointed by the boy's lack of knowledge and ambition. He could not help but secretly shake his head in disappointment. It was evident that what his wife had told him about the boy was simply not true. He had also met the son of the deputy mayor and was very impressed by his appearance as well as his wealth of knowledge in economics and politics. Chen Fan failed to measure up to his most basic requirement for a future son-in-law. It seems like I have a lot to discuss with my wife, Zhang Haisheng lamented in his mind. He knew his wife wanted to set up his daughter with the son of her best friend. He didn't protest her plan at first, but after meeting Chen Fan for the first time, he realized that he had to weigh in. My daughter would not fall for him anyway, Zhang Haisheng thought. He was confident in his daughter's judgment. Chapter 4. Avoid mortal refinement. This meal Chen Fan had shared with the Zhang family was not unpleasant by any stretch of the imagination. Zhang family strictly followed the traditional table manners, which meant no chattering while eating. However, Chen Fan didn't mind the silence. His mind had already veered off to the memories of his past life. It's been a while since I had a meal prepared by Auntie Tang, he thought wistfully. Auntie Tang's marriage was not perfect, particularly later in her life when Zhang Haishun had secured a prominent position in the government. Mired in public events, he rarely came home, and therefore the couple slowly drifted apart. Chen Fan remembered that when he was poor and down on his luck, he had to mooch off Auntie Tang. For him, Auntie Tang's dishes were the best meals he ever had. What a pity! Auntie was good-looking and had superb cooking skills. It was a shame that she got married to a husband whose only pursuit was power. Chen Fan lamented in his mind. While bustling about between the kitchen and the dining room, Auntie Tang managed to pause for a minute and spoke to Chen Fan. Fan, it's your first time visiting Chuzhou City. I will ask Ran Ran to take you to go to the city center to buy some toiletries and groceries. I doubt you will have everything you need at your rental house. Thank you. Chen Fan accepted the offer without consulting Zhang Qiran. Zhang Qiran nodded with an annoyed face. She might agree to the task now, but as soon as she walked out of the house, she would ditch the boy right away. Dinner was over. Chen Fan bid farewell to Auntie Tang with a smile. As soon as Chen Fan walked out of the house with Zhang Qiran, the smile on the girl's face evaporated into thin air. Without even looking at Chen Fan, she said coldly, I still have something to do. You can go shopping on your own, can't you? She paused a second and then she continued, you know how to get a taxi in the city, right? Her voice was laced with annoyance. She thought Chen Fan would play dumb and insist on her coming along with him, but to her surprise, she watched as the boy nodded and then said, of course I do. She didn't turn around until Chen Fan's image disappeared behind a row of willow trees. Guilt slowly crept into her heart, and she had the urge to catch up with the boy and help him. However, the thought of the huge difference in all aspects of their lives made her think better of her actions. They were not meant to be together. The sooner she made it clear to him, the better for both of them. Well, that was fast. Did you even go with him? Auntie Tang asked her daughter curiously as soon as the latter stepped into the house again. Still grappling with guilt, Zhang Qiran said quietly, he said that he could do it alone. She then heard her father snorted, I will not let my daughter hang out with such a loser anyway. Zhang Haishun's career had hit a glass ceiling. In order to be promoted even further, he would require strong support from those who have significant political clout, such as Deputy Mayor Li. Luckily for Zhang Haishun, the son of the deputy mayor was not only his daughter's classmate, but he also seemed to be very interested in Zhang Qiran. The deputy minister had even alluded to a potential marriage on multiple occasions. Although it was an opportunity that he couldn't pass up, Zhang Haishun couldn't agree to the proposal so easily, particularly when his daughter was still so young. It would be a sign of desperation if he did. Given the illustrious achievement of Chen Fan's mother, Zhang Haishun initially had high hopes for the boy. However, after meeting with Chen Fan, he conceded that the reality was far from what he had hoped for. Li Yijin, the mayor's son, was a much more suitable candidate for his daughter. He jerked his head towards the kitchen and grumbled on, your daughter is still young, don't just bring anyone to our home. She needs to focus on study. Auntie Tang frowned deeply and rushed out of the kitchen. Excuse you. She is my daughter, and this is my house. I can't bring whomever I want to here. Seeing her parents were at it again, Zhang Qiran heaved a sigh and went straight to her room. It could have been a nice and quiet evening, but that country boy had spoiled everything. Meanwhile, Chen Fan had already made his way down to the lake. He wasn't bothered at all by the unpleasant encounter with the father and daughter pair. They meant nothing to him, and he had a much bigger fish to fry. As he walked along the path that hugged the lake shore, he sensed the ebbs and flows of energy around him very carefully. The key spirit was not static. It flowed like water and always headed toward the area with a lower key potential. On very rare occasions, the key would pool together, forming what the cultivators would call a numinous abode. Wherever there was sea, there would be a desert. Some places hopelessly lacked key. After having followed the path for a few miles, Chen Fan finally stopped. This is it. I think I will have to brave the depths of the Yubu Mountain if I want to find an even better spot. He looked around and found out he was in a patch of willow trees. Despite it being a hot summer evening, he felt the cool breezes against his bare skin, and it was quite comfortable. Chen Fan found a big gnarly willow tree, and sat cross-legged, facing the Yanghui Lake. Nestled beside the developed urban spaces, Yanghui Lake, the Lake of Returning Swallows, was the largest lake in Chuzhou City. Many residential houses, commercial buildings, and hotels were built around the lake. Thanks to the abundance of water provided by the lake, Chuzhou City, the city in the northern part of the province, also had a bit of southern charm. Sitting under the willow tree, Chen Fan let the breeze comb through his hair as he relished the refreshing cool air from the lake. The cultivation progression was divided into 8 stages. Key refinement, cognate spirit, golden corn, nascent soul, soul formation, void returning, data reunion, and tribulation. Within each stage were sublevels. The first stage, for example, consisted of 3 sublevels: foundation establishment, ethereal enlightenment, and divine sea. As the name suggests, the first sublevel was about building a solid foundation from which all the other cultivation stages were developed upon. Once completed, the cultivator would have immense strength, speed, and agility. It was a transitional period when the cultivator reaches beyond the limits of the human body. The cultivation should also have the ability to gather some degree of arcane force to use minor spells. The next 2 sublevels were usually combined together and were called the Immortal Enlightenment phase. Once the cultivator had completed both levels, he or she could use even more powerful spells and arts. They could call upon the natural elements such as dirt to turn it into golems who would fight to the death. In the eyes of an ordinary human, these cultivators were no different than a god, although they were technically not gods by a long chalk. After the cultivator had reached the first stage, he or she would enter the stage called cognate, during which one could ride on the back of the vine to wherever he wanted to and live more than 500 years. However, even with those magical powers, they were still far from being immortals. It's too early for me to think about cognate. I should start by focusing on the foundation establishment for now. What kind of art should I use to rebuild my foundation? Chen Fan asked himself. The reason why my cultivation had failed during the tribulation was not only the mental demons but also my weak foundation. Chen Fan nodded as he reflected on his past cultivation. Ignoring all the pretenses and excuses, my downfall was in my inability to complete each stage to perfection. This time I need to learn my lesson and build each and every stage as firmly as possible. The thought of his slip-up during the most critical moment of his cultivation made Chen Fan heave a sigh of awe. He gripped. Nonetheless, there were still many things that Chen Fan should feel grateful for. For one, he was miraculously given another chance to start all over again. The foundation establishment stage was the first stage of the cultivation. It was arguably the most important one as well. In order to not repeat his mistake, Chen Fan was resolved to take his time and perfect this stage. I have collected all kinds of secret arts and magical spells in the past 500 years. In my collection, the arts of building the foundation alone amounted to 13,306 different pieces. In the last iteration of my life, I have used the art of foundation establishment from the True Martial Celestial set. It was simple and straightforward, however. I need something more powerful to achieve perfection. He had formulated a plan and decided on the art in his mind ever since he was in Anti-Tank's car. I will use the Grand Gao sex art to avoid mortal refinement. The set of the Grand Gao was one of the most prominent sects in the realm of cultivation. Although the set had never sired any heroic grandmasters, they were extolled for their unique art of foundation establishment. Once it was mastered, the art would help the cultivator to harness much more power than those who used other arts. Inclusiveness was not only the key in mastering this art, but it was also important for me to cultivate with such limited key resources. The key on Earth is drying up, and I need to scrape any useful resources that I could find, including any medicinal herbs, numinous treasures and even unsavory elements such as the malice key and death key. There would be no art more suitable than the art to avoid mortal refinement given the circumstances. The so-called malice key, key or death key were not that much different than the bread and butter of cultivation. Spirit key. They were all an extension of the universe itself, the reflection of one or two of its countless facets. That being said, the spirit key was much readily available on a planet, and it was easier to be bent into whatever shapes or forms the cultivator desired. The other forms of key required specific dharma arts to be harnessed. Without the aid of some very special arts, an ordinary cultivator wouldn't be able to harness all forms of key until they had reached the golden core stage. However, with the special ability of the Void Mortal Refinement Art, Chen Fan should be able to harness key from all sources from the very beginning. The word void in its name referred to the vast universe. The boundless space contained an unimaginable amount of key from various sources, all of which could be harnessed using this unit art. Whether it is the key inside the core of a star or the key of demonic origin deep underground, the art could handle them all. The motto of the Grand Gao sect also reflected their all-encompassing spirit well, I am nothing and everything. What a shame. Despite their great ambition of uniting all forms of key into one, the task was ultimately proven to be too much for the sect members with mediocre talents. Chen Fan shook his head and heaved a sigh. However ambitious the Grand Gao sect was, the advanced level cultivation required specialization instead of diversification. The true martial celestial set was able to rise to the top rank of all sects thanks to its dedication to only one or two arts. Chen Fan gathered himself and started the Void Mortal Refinement. The art was not only useful in harnessing ki but was also effective in straightening one's flesh. It was a good way to improve both internal and external prowess. As he gradually progressed with the cultivation, his body seemed to become a black hole that sucked various ki and energies into him. The air around Chen Fan was soon devoid of any life, so much so that even the breezy wind became stifled. He was so engrossed in his cultivation that he nearly forgot the passage of time. The moon rose and fell, and before he knew it, it was a brand new day. As the sun rose above the placid lake, Chen Fan suddenly opened his mouth as a white light streamed out from it. The light shot up a few dozen meters into the air, piercing the morning air as a sharp knife would to a fish belly. The strange white light didn't disappear until it had hovered above Chen Fan for another few minutes. Chapter 5 Martial Arts Masters. Chen Fan slowly opened his eyes when his cultivation was finally done. If anyone had been paying attention to him, they would find the boy's eyes shone like the pair of light bulbs. Slowly, the light in Chen Fan's eyes dimmed. What an amazing art! Although this is the first time I attempted to cultivate, I am already well into the first sub-level. At this rate, I should be able to reach the ethereal enlightenment within 6 months. Chen Fan exclaimed in his mind. The fast rate of progress in an environment so deprived of ki had surprised him. Although he was convinced that it had something to do with his past life's cultivation experience, he wagered that the unique art had helped too. Chen Fan picked himself up and shook his body, and the energy within his system made a continuous popping sound like popping popcorns. He closed his fingers and felt his body was bursting with energy. He turned around and punched the willow tree behind him. The old willow tree trembled as countless willow leaves fell to the ground. Chen Fan removed his fist from the tree, and he saw that his punch had left a 3-inch deep impression on the willow tree bark. This willow tree had lived over hundreds of years, and the age had turned its bark extremely hard. If such a punch landed on a mortal, there would be a hole wherever it landed. This was the result from his first day of cultivation. It wouldn't be long before he would be able to sever the tree trunk with one blow. Moreover, he did not use any arcane forces in that punch but relied only on the power of his body. Thus it was, the art of Void Mortal Refinement not only improved his energy but also significantly elevated his strength. He was already half as strong as a Superman after only one night of cultivation. However, Chen Fan shook his head in disappointment. Compared to the power that he used to wield, the strength in this punch was pathetic. I have a long way to go. He sighed. He looked up and noticed the nascent sun shining above the surface of the lake. He realized that he had been sitting there for a whole night. To his surprise, he was not at all tired. Although he didn't succumb to exhaustion, he felt hunger was claiming him. He patted his belly and decided that it was time to eat. As soon as he was out of the willow trees, he saw 3 people walking toward him. There was a woman in a white exercise suit walking beside an elderly man in a traditional Chinese suit. Trailing behind the two was a young man with a fit body and pair of sharp eyes. The girl of the group pulled her hair in a ponytail. Her beautiful face held a cold and distant expression. She had a pair of perky bosom and a tall body. She was as attractive as Jiang Qiran, if not more, thanks to her well-defined features. Chen Fan was still immersed in the joy of his achievement, and therefore, he didn't think too much of this encounter. He passed the three strangers without even sparing them a glance. However, three strangers had definitely noticed him. The young man glued his eyes on Chen Fan and didn't look away until Chen Fan had disappeared at the end of the walking path. Then and only then, he turned his head and looked at the old man in the traditional outfit, and said something. The old man shook his head in disagreement. It can't be. He is probably just the morning jogger. After returning to his rented home at the lakeside community, Chen Fan found a breakfast stall and ate a big meal. Then he went to the supermarket and bought some groceries. He managed to find a Chinese medicine shop and ordered some herbal medicines. When he got home from the medicine shop, it was already noon. He soon received a phone call from Auntie Tang, who invited him over for lunch at her house. He wanted to go, but the thought of seeing the cold faces of Jiang Haishun and Jiang Qiran made him think better of it. He improvised an excuse and told Auntie Tang that he would have to have lunch by himself. After hanging up the phone, Chen Fan suddenly reckoned that his parents had not given him a phone call yet. What kind of parents are they? Sending their son away to a new place and didn't even care to make a phone call. Maybe Auntie Tang was my real parent. Chen Fan shook his head in dismay. Soon, the courier knocked on his door. The medicine he had ordered has arrived. Cultivation without any help was possible, but it would be a very slow process. Things like herbal medicine and numerous treasures would greatly improve a cultivator's rate of advancement. Although the herb medicines on the earth were extremely low in quality, it was better than nothing. To prepare these herbs, he didn't need any medicine barrels, nor did he need to boil them for 72 hours as suggested by the apothecary at the drugstore. He simply drew a circle directly on the ground, then spread the medicine around and inside the circle. Then he stepped into the circle and initiated the art that he knew to harness ki from herbs. Spirit throbbing array. This was the most basic array formation that the cultivator could summon. The herbs he had scattered around him started to dance around on the ground until they threw themselves at Chen Fan. As the name of the array suggested, the technique was used to draw out the spirit ki from the herbs and fuse them with the caster's system. This was an easy spell to cast, but extremely effective. It could not only draw out the ki in common herbs but also the innumerous treasures. The cultivators had been studying and developing the cultivation techniques over millions of years, and therefore no longer did they need to follow the cumbersome methods of cultivation described in Wu's IA novels. This was the era of Xiaxia. The effectiveness of the array, to a large extent, depends on the experience of the cultivator. In Chen Fan's past life, he had been widely regarded as a great master in using arrays. Eyes closed, Chen Fan continued harnessing ki in the herbs for many hours. When he finally opened his eyes, it was already late evening. Today's cultivation was even more effective than last night's effort. Unfortunately, the effect wouldn't last long. Chen Fan frowned. Why the heck are these herbs so freaking expensive? I have already spent most of the money my mother had given me. I can't afford another round of harnessing anymore. It seems that I will have to go to the same place that I had spent last night. Chen Fan had never thought that money, the quintessential of worldly burden, would become so essential in his cultivation. Then, why is my mother so stingy? It's not like she is poor, he thought resentfully. He went to bed and slept until 5 in the morning. As soon as he got out of his bed, he went straight to that old gnarly willow tree by the lake. When Chen Fan finally arrived, he was surprised to find someone else had already taken his spot under the tree. It was that same girl with the ponytail that he had met yesterday, and she was practicing martial arts under the tree. Soon, Chen Fan noticed that she was not alone. The old man stood behind the tree and watched over the girl's practice. From time to time, he would stop the girl to offer some advice and guidance. The sharp-eyed young man was sitting inside of a black Jeep-like vehicle, his eyes constantly scanning the surroundings with a great measure of vigilance. Wasn't that the same group of strangers he had met yesterday morning? Unable to contain his curiosity, Chen Fan approached the group. The old man graced him a glance and then returned his attention to the girl next to him. Chen Fan was in a hurry yesterday, so he wasn't able to take a good look at the girl, but after observing the girl for a while today, he was shocked by what he found. In addition to the girl's exquisite face and tenacious body, she carried an almost heroine-like quality in every single movement. Even the simple act of lifting an arm seemed like a declaration of victory, and her powerful roundhouse kicks a righteous ultimatum to her enemy. However, her appearance wasn't what surprised Chen Fan. It was what he saw inside of her. Arcane energy. Is she also a cultivator? Chen Fan was caught by surprise as he did not expect to meet another cultivator on Earth. No, upon a closer look, Chen Fan found out that something was amiss about the energy inside of her. It was too weak and too simple. Probably isn't even strong enough to summon the simplest spell. As Chen Fan continued his observation, he noticed the unique shirt the girl was wearing, as well as the traditional martial arts suit the old man was in. He finally put the two and two together. Is that the so-called internal energy inside of her? Chen Fan grew up watching wuxia shows on TV, and therefore he had heard plenty of high tales about Gong Fu and internal energy. He always thought those high tales and legends were exactly what they were. High tales and legends, until now. He wagered that the so-called internal energy was a much weaker form of the arcane energy inside of the cultivators. Although Chen Fan was the earliest stage of his cultivation, he would already be the most deadly martial artist in the realm of wuxia. The internal force inside of the girl was far inferior to the arcane Dharma force inside of even the most incompetent cultivator. The difference in the two forms of energy was much like that of the diesel and rocket fuels. Where diesel could only be used to fuel trucks, but rocket fuel could be used to propel a rocket into space. They were both fuels, but one provided far more energy than the other. In addition, a cultivator could harness the power in the universe to command powerful spells and create miraculous numerous treasures. All of those were way beyond the reach of a martial artist. After Chen Fan's curiosities were satisfied, he gathered himself and continued watching the girls practice. From time to time, he would shake his head disapprovingly. The girl had noticed Chen Fan's criticism, and it didn't sit well with her. She paused and asked hotly, "What are you staring at? Do you even understand what this is?"